Hello, I'm Philip Stoughton. Welcome to PCB at Sea Level. I am joined today by Vytautas from TLT Printed Circuit Board and Raymond from Confidee. I want to talk about the supply chain around printed circuit boards. We're seeing a real squeeze at the moment. It's not the only thing in the supply chain that's challenged, but it is a really significant thing that we haven't seen for some considerable time. Before we do that, can you just give me a 1-minute introduction to each of you and your company? Vytautas, I think a lot of people know about TLT. You're one of the biggest and newest PCB manufacturers in Europe. Give me a quick introduction to you and the company.
Yeah, of course. So, hi, I'm Vytautas Ilgunas from TLT PCB, Chief Commercial Officer. So we have just built one of the biggest PCB factory in Europe. And our main purpose it is to bring manufacturing back in Europe.
Okay, excellent. And Raymond, just give us a quick introduction to you and what Confidee does.
My name is Raymond. I'm from Singapore, and Confidee, we call ourselves a RegTech company, but we are procuring as well as supplying PCBs.
Okay. And one of the fundamental parts to what you do is that whole traceability and compliance side of things. That's a really important element.
Yes, that's correct. Compliance is actually the key words.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So what I want to start with is European printed circuit boards do seem to be having a bit of a moment. European EMS is actually having a pretty good time too. And some of that is due to the defense market. Some of it's due to the AI market. I think automotive, we're still seeing challenges there. Vytautas, do you think that has caught the printed circuit board industry by surprise, or the EMS industry by surprise? And everything we've been saying about the supply chain being lacking for the last 5 years in Europe is kind of coming home to roost?
Yeah, so I think we should start with a bigger picture. Because 20 years ago, Europe had more than 600 PCB factories and around 20 laminate manufacturers. Today, we have fewer than 150 PCB manufacturers, and just around 30 factories generate more than 70% of the European PCB market. And when we talk about laminates, actually the situation is even more critical. Today, Europe has only one laminate manufacturer left. Yeah, and this is where today's shortage began. Because we didn't lose demand, we lost manufacturing capacity.
Yeah, and there's some correction in that with what you've been doing, with also some of the investments we've seen by some of those other very large companies. Raymond, from your point of view, what are you seeing in Europe and what are you seeing globally? Because my sense is that this problem's being felt maybe not to the same degree, but also in the US as well, where they have less capacity. And again, they've lost that connection to the laminate part of the supply chain.
I'd just like to add on what Vytautas has been saying. I think the shortages come from, first, the glass fabric. And then because of the AI, high demand from the AI drive, it has taken a lot of capacity. And like what you're saying, it is sucking away the oxygen in the room. But then today, we are seeing that because of the high demand, especially in the advanced material, right, it has now been cascaded down to even the standard FR4, right? Let's take, for example, in Asia, right? FR4, we can factories in China, for example, they can easily get FR4 within 3 days, right? In the good old days. Today, we're looking at lead time of up to 3 months.
That's insane.
And and when we're talking about the more advanced material, the Panasonic, the M6, M7, Metron 6, Metron 7, we're looking at what, 6 months, 9 months lead time.
Yeah.
I just had a communication with somebody from TUC. And we're hearing that they're offering like more than 6 months lead time.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening now.
Yeah. And is that reliable lead time? I mean, my sense is that a lot of people are providing, I guess, projections of lead time, but not guarantees. Is it purely that those laminate facilities are making much more money per square meter by making stuff for the AI market, which is hyperscaling and quite happy to spend.
Part of it is true because they're selling in terms of the advanced material are selling at much higher price, right? And what we have to know is that in order to produce 1 square meters of an advanced CCL, right, it would take the capacity of probably 5 square meters of a standard FR4, right? Yeah. So that's where you see the capacity is going away, and at the same time, price continue to go up because the demand is going up.
Absolutely. Vytautas, when you look at your own supply chain, are you buying laminate from that one place maybe that's left in Europe? But what about the remainder of your laminate? And is it something that suddenly you think, hey, when we built this factory, we should have put a laminate facility on the side of it?
Well, speaking about laminates, I think everything starts with forecasting. And today, availability is more important than price. And I really agree with Kolek because at the moment, everyone's speaking about AI and AI servers and so on and so forth. But actually, in Europe, almost no one produced PCB for AI at scale, maybe just for prototype. So, like example, we are working with customers in defense and critical infrastructure sectors, and they understand that you cannot wait until demand appears. Materials need to be planned and capacity need to be reserved. And that's why close cooperation between customer and PCB manufacturer is becoming more important than ever.
And that communication goes all the way along the supply chain, much as you communicate with your customers to let them know when that laminate's available and you can deliver. You need a very honest and clear communication with your laminate supplier, and clearly those laminate suppliers are being disrupted in a good way from their point of view by the massive additional demand they're seeing. How have they responded? Are they upping capacity? For example, Vytautas, you talked about the one laminate supplier left in Europe. Are they looking at building additional capacity, and how long a lead time is it for them to actually increase their capacity?
So in this case, we are working not just with a European laminate manufacturer. So it really depends on product. If we are speaking about the standard FR4, it could be really different. Could be from 1 month, could be till 5 months. So you need to secure everything in advance.
Raymond, you mentioned that you thought it was partly due to the glass element that's in there. When you look at all the elements that go into PCB laminate, do you see a fast route to increasing the volume, or is this something that the industry is going to suffer from as long as this hyperscaler boom for data warehouses continues?
I think first off, based on the information that we have here so far, we believe that this situation will continue until next year. So we won't see any good solution or a quick capacity availability this year. A few reasons for this. I think one is the demand for AI continue to increase, right? And at the same time, besides the shortage of glass cloth, we have run into shortage of resin, right? With the recent conflicts in the Middle East, one of the petrochemical complex in Saudi Arabia has been affected. And so far as I know, they have not recovered from that, right? And this complex alone is supplying to like close to 70% of the worldwide resin for laminates, right? Wow. So that is causing a serious shortages of raw material in order to build the copper clad laminates, right? So, and we don't see a quick recovery. We have seen some new expansion. Personally, we have also visited one in China earlier this year. They have huge plot of land new CCL factories is going to be built, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be like, we'll be ready probably end of next year. So, I don't see a quick recovery.
You feel that the scaling of the supply chain is going to happen faster in China than perhaps it can in Europe or the Americas, because it always does, and there seems to be that ability to build scale faster. But Vytautas, what do you see outside of China in terms of companies that make copper clad laminate wanting to grow and wanting to expand? And do you see a timeline that is any better than Raymond is seeing, or is it pretty much, it's gonna get quite a lot worse before it gets better?
I really agree with Raymond, because you cannot build a laminate or the same PCB manufactured in 6 months, even in 1 year or in 2 years. It takes years.
It's not just time, it's a big investment, isn't it? And what you need to make those big investments, particularly if you want to build laminate in Europe, is clear visibility. There's going to be long-term demand, and it sounds from what you guys are saying is that it's demand in 2028 that you need to be looking at and beyond to ensure that investment now is worthwhile.
Because,
and then you have to look. No, go ahead.
Because I just would like to add, because advanced manufacturing decision must be made years before the market realize it need them. Because if we wait a shortage, it's already too late.
Vytautas, it feels like you got that right with your PCB manufacturing facility. It's the rest of the supply chain that weren't as forward thinking as you were. I think what's also interesting in Europe, and we discussed this in Brussels last week, is we're seeing CHIPS Act 2, we're seeing the Industrial Acceleration Act, we're seeing different programs in Europe that require larger made in Europe elements. And as the EMS people look at their bill of materials and they know a certain percentage has got to be made in Europe, they look at the PCB as an opportunity to buy something from Europe, because many of the semiconductors cannot be. The time scale for the industry to respond to that, even if it's not laminate, if it's printed circuit boards, is quite considerable, isn't it? There's definitely a lag between supply and demand.
Yeah, because Europe is investing billions into AI, defense, and data centers.
Yeah.
But there is, one simple question: who will build the hardware and where? Because AI needs hardware, and hardware needs advanced PCB. And advanced PCB needs laminate.
I think what you were saying, Raymond, is really interesting, thinking about the resins, for example. I didn't realize that we had a 70% dependence on Saudi Arabia for resins for PCBs. One of the jobs that you have to do that I think is really important in this supply chain planning is look down the many, many tiers of the supply chain, almost back to sand, and figure out what the exposures are. I remember the first time I visited a Nanya PCB plant, they had a presentation in reception, and I think it was that God made copper and sand, and Nanya did the rest. I thought that was a really nice supply chain concept, but we're not in that situation anymore. There's a lot of interdependence. And there's a lot of geopolitical disruption plus market disruption that exposes that. When you think about the printed circuit board industry, apart from the ones we've mentioned in Saudi Arabia, where else do you see those weak points, those exposures?
In terms of the overall supplies, I think today the glass fibers are still majority coming out from China and Japan and Taiwan. You see, the way when I start mentioning all these countries, we are looking at Asia. So it goes back to the question in how well is Europe and even US, right, trying to bring back, you're trying to bring back manufacturing. PCBs, yes, we have TLT, which is very good. But then the next question is, where do you get the laminates?
Yeah.
We have to go one level down and to look at where do we get the supply of the laminates. Still, majority of this still come from Asia. That's where I think, in terms of the, at least from what I feel, is that from the point where the government is not pushing or have not enough policies to bring this back into Europe.
Yeah, and it's ecosystemic policies, isn't it? It's not just thinking about chips. You have to think about those chips going onto printed circuit boards. You have to think of the other requirements that the EMS companies that assemble them have, but you have to think of all the requirements that companies like TLT, PCB have within their supply chain. And it sounds like there's no quick fix to that, but it also feels like the medium-term policies perhaps don't go as far down the supply chain. Is that accurate? Do you think we've done a lot as an industry and through the Global Electronics Association to communicate the ecosystemic requirements to the Commission, but do you think there's still a lack of understanding there? Vytautas, what do you think?
So today Europe talks a lot about semiconductors, and that is important. But semiconductors are just the only part of the value chain. And you are really right, Philip, because for Europe also need laminates, need advanced PCB manufacturing, and Europe needs assembly as well. And we need to complete electronic manufacturing ecosystem, because if one part disappears, Europe loses control.
Yeah, absolutely. It is bringing everything together and trying to bring it all along at the same pace. I like the idea, particularly around the Industrial Acceleration Act, where it is pretty straightforward to be defined as made in Europe. You have to have a percentage. They're looking specifically at a policy for automotive and EVs, where 70% excluding batteries are manufactured in Europe. I think for electronics, it's then 50%. And I know that when the EMS companies look at their bill of materials, they have to work hard to find 50% that they can purchase in Europe. I know a lot of big EMS companies are now working with the groups of PCB suppliers, including their European suppliers, to have a strategy to help them do that and help them dual source. Raymond, when you zoom out globally and you see these challenges globally, you mentioned that you don't think the US is much better off. Do you see any other regions? And I'm thinking, for example, of places like India, where they are scaling their manufacturing ecosystem. Do you see them as another alternative solution where trading relationships, for example, between Europe and India are nice and strong?
India is starting. I think just some days ago, I've read about the ecosystems in India, that they are also looking at going backwards into the whole supply chain. So they wanted to have PCBs, they wanted to have the laminates built in India, right? But they're starting now to look into this.
So this is all long-term.
It was not there. It was not there previously, but now they're at least starting to look into this.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't say in the short term. I don't see that as a replacement or a very quick solution, but in the long term, maybe.
Yeah, it's interesting though, isn't it? When you look at if you think that AI, and I don't think it's just AI, I think defense plays a role in this as well, but I think AI plays a very big part in it because, within a data center, there's a lot of laminate. Let's face that, and we're building more data centers than have ever been built before, and that's continuing to scale. One wonders if there's somewhere in the next 2 to 5 years, perhaps a saturation in having enough data centers. I don't know if that ever happens because they seem to have a voracious appetite for them. But one wonders if we're in a situation where by the time the supply chain catches up, the demand will start to peter off again. Do you think that's a risk, Vytautas, that we've got this real mismatch in timing between supply and demand, and it's really hard to pull the two together?
Of course, Phil, because like I talked at the moment, in Europe, everyone is talking about chips, but chips don't float, and they need advanced PCB. Let's take one example. For one AI data center with around 100,000 GPUs, That translates into around 12,000 servers. And that's about 200,000 advanced PCB. And these are not standard PCB. We are talking about from 20 to 40 layer, high density, high reliability.
That's an incredible amount of laminate, isn't it?
Yeah, who are producing at the moment in Europe? Almost none.
Nobody. Yeah, nobody. So when we look, we've covered the long term, and the long term or the medium term isn't great. When you look at dealing with this short term, how do you both as companies try to help mitigate the risk for your customers? Is it just a question of making sure that communication channel is strong and you can give them visibility, or are there other things that you can do to help? Because risk in the supply chain is, top of agenda for many of both of your customers. Raymond, how do you see that?
Or for us, we have been warning or have been trying to inform the customer upfront. I think since last year we have been trying to tell, but at a more subtle way, to inform customers to prepare and to place their orders much way in advance.
Yeah.
But now we are actually going more active into this because of the shortage has been filled now much more closely. What we have also been trying to do with the customers is to get customers to approve multiple laminates, so that the projects is not locked into one sole material.
Yeah.
Right. So it gives the manufacturer a wider opportunities or flexibilities to choose different materials depending on what is available. I think one thing is very true. What Vytautas has been mentioned. It's no longer price. It's availability.
Availability. Yeah.
So we have to work with what is available. So in order to work with what is available, we need to have more alternative solution, alternative options.
Yeah. And are they responding? Are your customers responding by giving you more visibility? Are you seeing longer order schedules?
Yes and no. Some of them are still stubborn.
Yeah.
But yes, most of them are actually giving more visibilities in up to a year, and also willing to work on ECNs to change different materials to have additional materials being approved for a single project, which I think they start to see the benefits of doing so.
Yeah. Vytautas, are you doing that as well? Are you asking them to specify multiple laminate suppliers and give you more visibility?
Yeah, so always we are trying to find the best solution for each Gerber file, I could say. And is the main thing that the companies that plan together are the companies that keep producing when the market change. And they start with laminate manufacturers, PCB manufacturers, EMS or OEMs.
Okay. And are you finding that you now have a much longer order book than you had 6 months ago? And I know you guys have been on a ramp anyway since you opened the facility. But are you finding that you're seeing orders that stretch into 2027?
Yeah. And sometimes not just orders, but sometimes some capacity reservations. So, yeah.
Okay. And what does that mean for your plans? Does it mean you're already thinking of the next extension, or how does that fit with your vision of TLT when you first built it? I guess a little over a year ago you opened.
Yeah. So overall we are speaking about vertical integration solution for our customer. Because now we have PCB, we have EMS, we have plastic molding, and we should start semiconductor and power module factories. So our target is to have everything in one place.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? And I think that visibility. So last word from both of you. Raymond, in terms of the short and medium term, what are you hoping will happen from a customer point of view and a supply chain point of view to make your life a little bit easier?
I would really like to see customers more willing to accept changes, more willing to approve new materials, and of course the visibility as far as they can stretch. And one thing. Another thing is more of for the whole industry, because of the current situation, there are customers or manufacturers who are placing orders that is not in demand. By doing so, you're just making it worse.
Yeah. There's always a bit
you're
of
buying something that you do not need, so you're just making it worse for the rest of the people to share.
Yeah, it's the toilet paper shortage during COVID all over again, isn't it? It's panic buying doesn't do any good. I really think it's the specifying other laminates is a really important message, and I think that should be a relative easy lift for many customers. The last word from you, Vytautas. What do you hope from your customers? What do you hope from your suppliers in the coming months?
I could say maybe not just about customers or suppliers, but overall about European ecosystem. We need to support whole ecosystem. PCB manufacturers, materials, assembly, and semiconductors. Only then we can really change something.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, Vytautas, and I think when you look at certain parts of that ecosystem and supply chain, some parts are undervalued, and I think if you're not thoughtful of the impact that has on the overall process, then those undervalued parts of the supply chain can wither, and that's when you have problems like these. And I don't think this is the last problem we'll see. I think disruptions in the supply chain are part of life nowadays, and we have to be ready for them. Gentlemen, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me today. It's been a real pleasure. I hope we can talk again soon, and I guess we'll see you both at least at Electronica if we don't see you before later this year. Thanks so much.